So one of the things that I was thinking about, I spent some time up in North Branch, and how I arrived in North Branch is as important as what happened while I was up there. I was working with, in Hagerstown, young men that were going up for parole, and so I had set up a table in the recreation area, and I was counseling them how to interview, how to prepare themselves for parole, how to get their families involved, how to, get people in the community to help them in their parole process. And because it was so many guys flowing through, they would come, they would sit at the table, I would talk to them, they would get up, they would leave, somebody else would come, they would sit at the table, I would talk to them. The officers kept seeing that process, and because of that process, determined that I was organizing something in Hagerstown, which I wasn't, and they snatched me up 4 o'clock one morning and shipped me up to Cumberland, Maryland. And once I got up there, they took all my books, my research materials, stuff, because I was at the time doing graduate work. And so initially, when I got up there, I came in conflict with the guard force, because they took books from me that actually had my pictures on the cover of the books, and said that I could not have those books because it was political material. And while I was up there, they had this unit, and I think at the time it was housing unit 6. Now it's 1 and 2. But when I was up there, it was 6 and 7. I was in 7 and 6. They had the unit in which they had people in solitary confinement, and it was hard even for me to believe this. They were not only kept in cells, they never got out of their cells. They actually had showers, mobile showers that they took down the tier, and they affixed to the cell, and they opened the cell door and let a guy come out, and he would go in the mobile shower. He would take his shower, 5 minutes worth of water, 5 minutes worth of soap, 5 minutes to rinse off, and they would put him back in the cell. So he never even got out of the cell. And there were guys there for 5 and 10 years that all they could see in front of them was a brick wall. There was no, in most jails, you can look across and see people across the tier. You can holler at people, or you can talk to people. In this particular unit, you can't see anything but a brick wall. And you don't get out. You don't get to go exercise. That whole process was so inhumane that when people were coming out of it, whether they did a year or 2 years or 3 years, they came out, they were actually mentally unbalanced. They had lost a lot of their facilities in terms of thinking and acting. They were paranoid. They weren't used to being around people. And in some cases, I actually seen people that went in there 19, 20, 21. They came out 25, 26, and they were actually, and I know this sounds like it's over exaggeration, but they were actually eating and snatching flies out of the air. I mean, there was literally mental damage done by being put in those positions like that. And I got out of there, I went to another jail, but one of the things that I discovered in dealing with these guys is that they were very angry. They were very, very angry because they thought they had been abandoned. For one thing, Cumberland is a couple 100 miles away from the urban centers where they get locked up at. They get locked up in Prince George's County, they get locked up in Baltimore. Some of them might have lived in DC, but whatever they got arrested for, it happened in Maryland. Cumberland is in a position where their family members have to go stay overnight, rent a hotel. A lot of them didn't have that kind of money, so they might get a visit once a month. They might get a visit once every other month. So these guys feel isolated. They feel abandoned, and they feel like there's abuse occurring to them in these locations, and nobody cares about them because they don't hear about this kind of work. They don't, I mean, they might hear in terms of one or two lawyers going up and investigating and saying what's going on and so on, but the general population itself don't know that there's people in the community that care about them. They don't know that there's people in the community that's actually looking at this kind of stuff. They don't see that because a lot of times, not only are they isolated, but they're so angry that they can't even reach out and communicate with people. So they come back to the community. They come back to my community in most cases, and because they feel abandoned and because they feel like nobody cared about them, then they don't really care about me, or they don't care about other people in the community, but they have all that frustration and all that anger, and the first little incident that happened is transferred to whoever triggers that. It doesn't occur up in Cumberland, or it might occur up in Cumberland, but they are locked up, or in ECI, or in other institutions, but they're locked up or they're locked down, so they don't get to kind of like act out that frustration. When they get back in the community, that rage, that anger, that feeling of abandonment, that mental capacity that's been diminished, all of that stuff plays a role in some incident that go down, and it ends up resulting in somebody losing their life or somebody getting hurt and so on, right? One of the things that I'm thinking, even now as I'm talking, and I recognize that people are actually interacting and going up into these institutions. One of the things that I realize is that it's important to get more people up into those institutions. It's important for people to go and put that spotlight that he was talking about, because that's the thing that they don't want to happen. It's like, now, I don't know this month, but last month, the month before, the North Ranch, the jails up in Cumberland, they were locked down. People couldn't go up and visit their families. Now, I could be wrong about that, but parents were calling in and people were calling in and saying that they couldn't talk to their family member. The jails were locked down, so even if you could travel that 100, 200, 300 miles, whatever the case would be, you still couldn't get in and see anybody. And that ability to lock down those, because there's always going to be incidents, and if you can lock down the whole facility and keep it locked down 4 or 5 days or so on, it just really creates the level of frustration even more. And so it's important, I think, for people to start participating in whatever kind of social programs they have in there, for people to start going up and even if you find people just to visit, you know, to go up and to go on a visit and talk and find out, because one of the things that happens is that same person, and he was saying like 80 or 90% are going to come back to the community. That's pretty much true. That same person that you go visit is going to start seeing the community differently, you know. So I know you're thinking in terms of how you can address this legally and how you can reform the stuff down in Annapolis and so on, but you really have to also look at it on a personal level. And he was talking about the moral deficit, but really you have to look at what can you do on a personal level to save one person from feeling dehumanized, demoralized, frustrated, angry, and then eventually striking out. You can do something. We all can do something, and I think all of us need to do something and encourage other people to do it, because when people inside the prison system see somebody other than their loved one come through the door and ask questions about them or show some concern for them. That transfers that thinking from we're isolated, nobody care about us, only our family or only our loved ones have some concern. I don't owe anybody else anything. It's not my community. I'm isolated, I'm alone, and it's me against the world. That changes as soon as somebody that's not part of that family, that network, come through the door and say, I care. Whether they come through the door in a legal setting, or whether they come through the door in a social setting, or whether they come through the door as just interested visitors. And I think it's important because, we can't save everybody and we can't stop all of this, but we need to work on all the different levels. We need to work down in Annapolis, we need to work in terms of social organizations. We need to spread that idea around that, we need to look at what we're doing, and we need to also work on the individual level.